Hello?
Hi, this is the dispatcher at the Sheriff's Department. What's your name?
Susan Multanen,
Okay, Susan, where were you shot at?
like in the lower chest area.
Okay, where did he go? Is he still at the house?
What?
Is he still at the house?
I don't know because I crawled through the woods and got away from there.
Do you think that they were leaving?
I don't know. I really don't know.
What kind of car does he drive?
Oh, I don't know. He has a police car.
Susan Multanen gave her last testimony to a 911 dispatcher on May 14, 2010. Hearing her calm voice, you wouldn't believe she'd just been shot in the chest or that she'd die in the next 20 minutes. On May 14, 2010, Susan Multanen's dying words were recorded by a 911 dispatcher. It's hard to believe, hearing her, that she'd just been shot in the chest. She was about to die 20 minutes later, but not before revealing some dark secrets. The details that emerged from this call would lead investigators down a path they never expected. They were about to unravel one of the most unusual and disturbing cases Pierce County had ever seen. Who was the shooter? Why was Susan targeted? And how will her last words lead the officers to the truth? For context, let us start from the beginning. Monty Multanen, 70, and Susan Multanen, 65, were the parents of Sarah Myron, who was married to the Deputy Sheriff of Pierce County, Alan Myron. They lived in a little and peaceful neighborhood between Vancouver and Camas. Remembered fondly among their neighbors, one of the Multanen's neighbors would say that they always cut some flower roses from their garden to give to them before leaving town, along with a note that explained where they were going and how to contact their 2 children in case of an emergency. But on May 14, 2010, they didn't tell anyone before they left town for the last time. What was about to happen would shock everyone, because the couple were the kindest people ever. They raised numerous foster children, along with their daughter Sarah and their son Eric. Monty mostly spent his time taking care of his children and grandchildren. As for his wife, Susan was a registered nurse and later changed her career to take care of the family. So what changed? On May 14, 2010, 911 dispatchers received a call from Tom Stevens, who had found a woman bleeding in his backyard. This woman was Susan Multanen. He told the dispatcher that the woman was shot in her chest and was bleeding out.
911, we're reporting.
I'd like to report gunshot wound.
Someone got shot where?
She's below her chest on...
Okay, but where's she at?
9922 58th Street, Northwest.
Okay.
While he was making the report, Susan was still awake and calmly answered his questions on what had happened so he could relay it to the police. Susan revealed that her husband had also been shot and was somewhere else, but didn't know where. She was still alert when the 911 call happened, but would later pass away when taken to the Harborview Medical Center in Seattle. With a gunshot wound to the chest, 68-year-old Susan had crawled through the woods into this neighbor's house to ask for help. While Stevens provided the address, it was revealed that she'd crawled from her son-in-law, Alan Myron's house, who was the deputy sheriff of Pierce County.
So do you know where she was when this occurred?
She keeps saying it's Deputy Myron's house.
So, Deputy Myron's house?
Yeah.
Is she Deputy Myron's wife?
What's your relation to Deputy Myron's mother-in-law? Man, move back towards me, please.
Okay, does she know who shot him?
She's Deputy Myron.
This is Deputy Myron's mother-in-law?
Yes.
And Deputy Myron shot her?
And Deputy Myron shot you? Yes.
That's when they realized that she was Deputy Myron's mother-in-law and was shot by the deputy sheriff himself. They didn't know where the deputy sheriff was, but there was another point of concern, which was his wife, Sarah.
And who else is shot? Her husband?
Her husband.
Okay, what about his wife?
I'm not his wife. I don't know anything about the situation.
Oh, I understand. Can you ask her if she knows where his wife is?
You know about Deputy Myron's wife? She's in Federal Way at the hospital where her daughter's a patient.
Okay.
It was revealed that she was at St. Francis Hospital in Federal Way with another one of their children who was ill, which meant that she was not there during Myron's reign of terror. The other two children weren't at home at the time of the shootings. After a while, the dispatchers contacted Stevens to find out his exact address and understand how far it was from Deputy Myron's house. But all Stevens knew was that he'd found this woman in his driveway and that her husband was probably still with Myron.
Okay, where's the father-in-law at? Is he still over at 1008?
I have no idea.
Can the lady, let me talk to the lady.
She thinks that he's in the driveway.
He's in the driveway? Of your house?
Of their house, of Deputy Myron's house.
Susan Multanen, despite the pain from the gunshot wound to her chest, was able to talk to the dispatchers at the other end of the call. Her voice was calm and clear.
Hello? Hi, this is the dispatcher at the Sheriff's Department. What's your name?
Susan Multanen, M-U-L-T-A-N.
Okay, Susan, did Deputy Myron shoot you and your husband?
Yes.
Okay, where did he go? Is he still at the house?
What?
Is he still at the house?
I don't know because I crawled through the woods and got away from there.
Okay, so the last time you saw him, he was inside the house?
Well, I was upstairs in an upstairs apartment that's over their garage.
Okay.
And I crawled out the back way through the woods. I came over here. This is 2 houses down.
It would later be revealed that she gave them more than enough information that they needed to handle the case. The big problem was that no one knew where Myron had gone. While the dispatchers were on their way, they tried to determine if there was anyone else in the house with Myron. If there was, that would mean that someone else was in danger of getting shot aside from the Multanens.
Okay, do you know if there's anyone else beside your husband and Myron there?
Our granddaughter was there with me, 15, named Sarah.
What's her name?
Kristen.
Kristen? Is that Alan's daughter?
Yes.
And she was in the house when you left?
She was up in the apartment with me, and then he took her outside. So they were down in the driveway.
Okay, so Alan and Kristen were in the driveway when the last time you saw them?
Yes.
Do you think that they were leaving?
I don't know. I really don't know.
What kind of car does he drive?
Oh, I don't know. He has a police car, and he has kind of an older sedan.
What color is the older sedan?
Kind of a grayish.
And it's a four-door?
I think so.
Susan is bold enough to answer these questions despite her current state. But do these questions seem justified to you? That's when they realized that Alan's 15-year-old daughter, Kristen, was also in the house, and Myron had taken her outside and to the driveway. The police suspected that he'd taken his daughter hostage with one of his vehicles. Fearful that Myron might come looking for her, Susan and her neighbor, Stevens, had locked themselves in the back room of the house and turned the lights off.
Now, can you guys see the house from where you're at?
No, I'm hiding in the back room of this other house. I'm 2 doors down. I crawled out through the woods.
Okay, where were you shot at?
Lower, like in the lower steps area.
Well, you sound like you're doing pretty good. Do you know where your husband was shot at?
I don't know, but Ellen told me he was dead.
The actual story was that Alan had first shot Monty Multanen in the driveway, then went to Susan, telling her that he'd killed her husband before shooting her in the chest. He then took his daughter Kristen with him and ran away. So the police were relying on Susan's answers. Susan explained that she and her husband Monty had come to Pierce County to stay with the Myrons because of the deteriorating relationship between the couple. She also added that the deputy officer, Myron, had been an abusive husband to their daughter for a while, and that the children were already estranged from their father.
What was going on today that set Alan off like this?
Well, they've had a very sticky situation. He's been a kind of an abusive husband for a while, but they've had a daughter with an eating disorder with depression, and she tried to kill herself and was put into the hospital on Tuesday.
Yeah.
The children are somewhat estranged from their father, and she didn't want her father to see her. And then she was moved to another hospital and go away last night.
All right. Is he a drinker? Had he been drinking or anything today, or?
Don't know. As far as I know, he hasn't been, but I don't know.
You're not sure. Okay.
Once the police had found out where Susan and the neighbor were, she was airlifted to the nearest hospital, but unfortunately didn't make it. This made Alan's crime a double murder, but that was not the end of it. Kristen, Alan Myron's 15-year-old daughter, had also dialed 911 after she witnessed her father shoot her grandmother in the chest. She hid in the basement of the family home during the events and told the dispatchers that she was having a nap when the gunshot sound woke her up. After going upstairs, she saw her father shoot her grandmother and say that her grandfather, Monty, was dead. Then he put Monty's body in the garage. After shooting the couple, he told his daughter to leave the apartment with him and come to the main house. He spoke to his 15-year-old daughter, blaming the entire incident on her mother because she'd not returned his phone calls and texts. She'd also refused to speak with him when he arrived at the hospital when one of their children was hospitalized. Upon getting to the main house, he took his daughter to the master bedroom and continually tried to contact his wife, who had no idea of the situation in the house. He then told his daughter to lock herself in the basement, and then he barricaded himself in the master bedroom with weapons and a shotgun, which he told his daughter was for himself. It was at this time that Susan, who was wounded, crawled out of Myron's apartment and into her neighbor's house. After Kristen hid in the basement, a 22-year-old friend who was staying with the family came home completely unaware of the situation. The friend found Kristen in the basement and realized what had happened. The friend and the daughter went back upstairs in an attempt to calm Myron down, but their pleas fell on deaf ears and he asked them to go back to the basement. The house was soon surrounded by the police and the hostage negotiation started.
Now again, this standoff is still going on. There are 2 people dead, the father-in-law as well as the mother-in-law who passed away after being taken to the hospital. We don't know how this actually all started, other than that it is a domestic incident. We understand, though, that the deputy had been on medical leave this past year and only recently returned to duty full-time.
The first attempt was to persuade him to let his daughter and their family friend leave the house. After some back and forth, he eventually allowed them to go, leaving only him in the house. The negotiators discussed with Myron for 2.5 hours, trying to get him to come out and surrender. It was unclear about how many weapons were in the house, so it was impossible to storm in. As a cop himself, Myron understood the officers' tactics and could not easily be fooled. He was monitoring the police scanners and occasionally responding to the police officers that spoke on it. One of the deputies broadcasted on the radio, "Assume he's got his radio on. We're not going to slip anything past him." For the next 7 hours, Myron complained to the police about different topics. He spoke about how unhappy he was with the Pierce County Sheriff's Department, especially after the accident that put him on light duty 2 years after a back injury on the force. His main focus in his complaints was on his deteriorating relationship with his wife. He explained how their marriage was falling apart and how his in-laws had turned his wife against him. He believed that the entire problem of his marriage was because of them. But his motive wasn't the biggest twist in this case. There was more to come. He also blamed the Multanens, saying that they didn't mind their business, but instead involved themselves in the relationship between him and his wife, which is why he killed them. He was talking about the same Multanens who were not only close to their daughter, but also to him. Susan made Little Debbie's, which were his favorite snack cake, whenever they went to visit them in Gig Harbor. Myron had even named his yellow Labrador Monty after his father-in-law. And when Myron had to go on light duty, the Multanens didn't hesitate to assist Myron's family financially. Around 10 p.m. that day, the deputies who surrounded the house heard a muffled gunshot. The Tacoma police took over the incident, and the SWAT team stormed in to find Myron dead. Near his body were 4 weapons, a shotgun, rifle, and 2 handguns. It was unclear which one exactly he used to shoot himself. Alan Myron was a 49-year-old deputy sheriff of the Pierce County Sheriff's Department. For the 11 years that Myron had worked in the Sheriff's Department, he was only reprimanded once, which was for not being courteous after he responded to a police call. This showed that he was a good police officer that could be widely trusted by the community.
Did you ever think he was capable of doing something like this?
We never know what people live through. And I would never have thought that. But
Why not?
because he always seemed so kind.
Everyone interviewed about Alan Myron had the same thing to say. He had the perfect life. But clearly, there was more to it than met the eye. The biggest twist in irony was that Myron was known to be a fierce advocate for domestic violence victims, even looking for solutions to the widespread problem and clamoring for more punishments for those involved in domestic abuse. He was campaigning for tougher programs to prevent domestic violence tragedies, only to turn out as the perpetrator and the center of a domestic violence problem in his own home. During the 911 call, Susan Multanen had revealed that Myron had been an abusive husband for a while. But despite having trouble at home, he was working with Lane Judson, the father of Crystal Brame, who was a domestic violence victim, to prevent domestic violence. More than a year before Myron committed that heinous act, he reached out to Judson in an email saying,
"My interest is not only personal but professional. I am a member of law enforcement. I am personally appalled by the lack of integrity that is shown to this topic." I'm just surprised that somebody hasn't come to look at this stuff or figure out why he was talking about domestic violence, and then he turns around and commits it. The worst act in his, it's terrible.
An advocate for preventing domestic violence was revealed to be a perpetrator for a long time before he pulled that trigger on his parents-in-law, who treated him like family. And then, when they arrived to stop him further, he killed them and then took his own life. And all the while, Myron never took responsibility for his actions. After the tragic events unfolded, Pierce County launched an investigation into the case to find out what exactly happened. What could drive a man who his friends described as a kind person to suddenly snap and kill his parents-in-law? The day before the incident, Sarah Myron had contacted her husband's immediate supervisor, expressing concern of how he behaved when he came to visit her and their older daughter in the hospital that evening. Myron had suddenly showed up, and they didn't want to see him, which made him angry. But this was not the first time that the couple had fought. Investigations revealed that their neighbors had called 911 before over the past 4 to 5 years because of the yelling they heard in the Myron house. Rather than officers coming around to check it out, the issue was resolved over the phone. Sarah Myron, not knowing that her parents had been killed, an hour later also contacted a domestic violence detective in the department. She set up an appointment for Monday the 17th of May 2010, but little did she know that it would be too late. In fact, Myron had also tried to conceal the crime by hiding Monty's body in the garage and the housing down the driveway where Monty was. During the investigations, the 15-year-old daughter was too traumatized to talk to the police. All of these pieced together told the police that Myron was not only but also a domestic violence perpetrator who had finally snapped. The nature of the argument that eventually triggered the shooting was unclear, and the result of that was the loss of 2 innocent lives.
2 people were killed. We believe they were killed by a sheriff's deputy, Alan Myron, a man who wore a badge and protected people, but then stepped over the line and went from a protector to being a criminal. And I believe this should be called exactly what it is. So you will not hear me using the word tragedy. You will hear me using the word murder. These were murders.
After the horrifying incident, the whereabouts of Sarah Myron and their 4 children were hidden from the public in an attempt to protect their privacy. The community held a gathering on May 16, 2010 to remember the Multanen couple. Even as it's been recognized that Alan Myron committed the crime, the question remaining was, did he suddenly snap, or had he always been this way? What do you think about the murder-suicide case of Alan Myron? Do you think that there could have been better efforts to save the family by identifying Myron as a domestic violence perpetrator? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. If there's a case you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to share your suggestions in the comment section below. For more captivating true crime stories, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.